Welcome back everyone. Let's go ahead and talk about none other than the Samsung Galaxy S10e and see how it holds up in 2021. Now what I can tell you is this device is seriously such an impressive device even now in 2021. And the main reason for this is because this is actually the last time we saw an E device from Samsung. Right now they're doing something else, they're trying to do like their flagship is like the S21, but it's like a cheaper one. Like I'm not really too sure what they're doing, but the Galaxy S10e was a designated flagship from their main S lineup, which is great. Samsung makes a lot of budget phones, which are awesome, but the S10e was totally different. I feel like this was a budget phone, but like the most non-budget phone ever, because it had crazy features at the time, and it still has a lot of cool features for sure. Now, I will go ahead and leave a Galaxy S10e link down in the description. Maybe some other phones that I would recommend this year too, probably not. So if you want to pick up the Samsung Galaxy S10e for the cheapest prices that I find, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and help support the channel at the same time. Now looking on the front of the S10e, as always, this thing did have a 5.8-inch dynamic AMOLED display. It was a full HD panel, so very similar to what we have on the Galaxy S21, but this was actually a really good panel, especially compared to even the S10, but even compared to the predecessor, which was the Galaxy S9. This was a really good panel. You had a hole punch display, very little bezel on the whole entire panel, and this was seriously one of its biggest assets for sure. Having a panel like this at this day and age is seriously something that's going to future-proof yourself for a while, because still phones are being released with notches and all this other stuff, but this phone had a hole punch display, which made it that much better of a deal in my opinion. Now you did have the fingerprint sensor on the side of this device. On the bottom you had that USB Type-C port, which is great, as well as a headphone jack. So if you're somebody who still needs a headphone jack on your device, you're going to have that type of capability from the Samsung Galaxy S10e, which that in and of itself is another huge reason why the S10e still completely holds up for sure. Now you do have IP certification on this phone as well as a microSD card slot. I mean, think about it like this. Samsung has just removed the microSD card slot from all their other devices right now, but the Samsung Galaxy S10e still has that capability, which that in and of itself makes this phone still feel and perform so great. And in some ways it's actually even better than the Galaxy S21 in terms of sheer features on the outside. So that's a huge thing to keep in mind. I'm not going to sit here and say the Samsung Galaxy S10e is a bad phone or it's, ugly or this or that. That is not the case. Compared to the S10e to the Galaxy S21, there are still a lot of reasons why the S10e may be a better phone than the Galaxy S21, which is so crazy to say. Now on the back of the S10e, you have a glass back on this device as well. Again, you look at the S21, a plastic back on that device. This one has a glass back, so it feels that much better in the hand. You have a wireless charging and reverse wireless charging, which on a device like this makes it that much better of a deal as well. And at the end of the day, when you hold a phone like this and when you hold something like a Galaxy S21, some people may say that the S10e may have more features and just may feel better in the hand than the Galaxy S21. So that's another pretty big thing to keep in mind. Now on the top of the Galaxy S10e, you have a dual camera setup, which I'll go ahead and hit on right now. It's a 12 megapixel wide angle lens, then a 16 megapixel ultra wide sensor. Now this thing doesn't have the craziest amount of features, in terms of the camera, but it still has a decent dual camera setup. Thank God it has an ultra wide sensor, not a telephoto lens. And funny enough, I've done so many comparisons from just this camera alone to a ton of other devices, and almost always I am shocked by how well the Galaxy S10e's camera still is. And in 2021, there's no difference. I truly do believe I did an S10e versus iPhone 12 and the Galaxy S20 versus S10e. And to be completely honest, yes, those devices may be better in some areas, but the Galaxy S10e's camera is still a really good setup for sure. It's almost as good as the Galaxy S10's. Now you still have the ability of shooting 4K at 60 on the back, which is perfect enough for a lot of people. You have optical image stabilization on the main lens, and even the software itself with the One UI 2.5, it brought a lot of features straight into just this camera software alone. You have Pro Mode and so many different capabilities. So at the end of the day, the Galaxy S10e has a ton of different, features that a lot of other devices probably still don't even have, which is insane. Even the front camera with its 10 megapixel sensor, you have the ability of shooting 4K at 60. You look at phones like the OnePlus 8 Pro, even the OnePlus 8T, those are way newer phones, but even those phones don't have the capability of shooting 4K at 60 on the front. So in and of itself, I think the Galaxy S10e has a beautiful camera setup still. It's not an old device at all and by any means, but it is an older phone with still a really good camera for sure. So in terms of the camera setup, that really pretty much covers it up. Now, software-wise, this is another area where the Samsung Galaxy S10e really did a pretty good job at it. I mean, when you look at this device, it's definitely not my favorite version of software. One UI is probably one of my last favorite versions of software, I'll be honest. But I'll be truthful, when you have a device that's still supported with software and it's still going to be getting support, it really does add a lot more character to that device. And with the Galaxy S10e, even though it's not my favorite version of software, you can always throw a custom launcher on it and kind of move on from there. You can't necessarily custom ROM this device, at least not to my knowledge, but you still have a lot of capability when it comes down to it. And the fact that it got an extra version of software not even like 4 or 5 months ago is another huge reason why the Galaxy S10e still holds up completely in 2021. And even going into 2022, it's still going to be getting software in that sense too. So again, in and of itself, that's another huge reason why the Galaxy S10e still holds up completely in 2021. Now moving on to the performance side of things, the Samsung Galaxy S10e has a Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 chipset, an octa-core CPU, an Adreno 640 GPU, and 2 different models of this device. The base model had 6 gigs of RAM, and the top tier model had 8 gigabytes of RAM. So keep this in mind, the bottom tier model doesn't necessarily have as much RAM as the S21, but the top tier model of the S10e has, the same amount of RAM as the S21 and the S21 Plus. So again, another huge reason why the Galaxy S21 isn't really a crazy big upgrade coming from even like a Galaxy S10e, but again, once I get that phone in-house, I'll go and test it further. But the Galaxy S10e's performance on One UI 2 and hopefully coming on One UI 2.5 and 3 is going to be really good for the most part. I mean, you're going to be getting extremely good quick capability from this type of performance. It doesn't have the latest chipset, it doesn't have the craziest amount of specs inside of it, but the specs that it does have, the RAM and even the Snapdragon processor, are actually really good chipsets. It's a really good mixture. You're not going to be getting crazy smooth 120Hz refresh rate like performance, but whatever you're going to do with it is going to be perfectly fine. As long as you're not comparing this phone to something like a Galaxy S21 or a Xiaomi Mi 11 or something, then you're probably not going to feel left out. The performance of this phone is still really, really good in terms of basic tasks. If you're somebody who just wants to go ahead and just text people, call people, go on Snapchat, TikTok, this, that, and that, for the smaller things, you're going to have a pretty good experience. Even if you have to go and step it up to, heavier intensive gaming, even video editing, photo editing from this specific device, you're probably going to be okay. The screen size is a little bit smaller to some people's standards, but still it's a 5.8-inch panel. It's perfectly fine. But the performance in it is going to be perfectly fine. You know what I mean? Like, I would kind of still say the Galaxy S8's performance isn't really horrible, but this specific device is still going to be getting you really, really good performance for the most part. Again, definitely not perfect performance. You're going to see a lot of choppiness, in my opinion, from just probably the software sake. If you're swiping out of something, if you're going to a different app, the animations might not be the smoothest, but you're still going to be getting a pretty okay performance, even in terms of the smoothest factor. But the raw speed, if you're trying to go from one point to the other, you're definitely going to be getting a really good performing phone from the Samsung Galaxy S10e still in 2021 when you consider the price and the age of this device. So in terms of that pretty much covers it up. Now, battery life, this is another area which really shocked me about the S10e. Now, it has a 3100 mAh battery inside of it. Like I said, reverse wireless charging and standard wireless charging. And here's the thing, and the biggest thing to keep in mind with the Samsung Galaxy S10e, I've done so many battery comparisons between this device and so many other phones, and what I basically saw was that the Galaxy S10e was beating the iPhone SE2. I think it beat the iPhone 12 series as well, and especially beat the iPhone 12 mini. And it's just crazy to me that this phone that came out 2 years ago with its degraded battery and all this other stuff is still outperforming a lot of other devices as well in terms of the battery life. So I'll definitely tell you, when it comes down to the battery segment, I think the battery life is still pretty good. Definitely not the best. The S21 Ultra is probably going to have the better battery life, but this device still has a really good sized battery in it, and it still performs pretty well in terms of the battery standpoint. So in terms of that pretty much covers out the whole entire video. And to answer the question, is the Samsung Galaxy S10e still worth it in 2021? Well, let me go ahead and answer like this. Let me just start off with some pros. The Samsung Galaxy S10e still has a beautiful display on the front. Even though it's not, a 1440p 120Hz panel, it still has a lot of capability when it comes down to the panel itself. It's a good size in the hand. It's not a huge phone. You can hold it with one hand, even me, and it's a really good sized phone. The hole punch display is beautiful. USB Type-C with Samsung DeX in and of itself is another huge feature as well. You still have the headphone jack on this phone, as well as the microSD card slot. Those two things are just crazy to see on a phone still in 2021, and we have those capabilities on the Samsung Galaxy S10e. You have reverse wireless charging, which is great. You have a really good camera setup even on the front of most Android phones don't have great front cameras. This device still has a really good front camera, but an excellent back camera as well. The battery life on this phone is still great. The performance of this phone is amazing still for the price tag of this phone and everything. And I'll tell you, this phone is still completely worth it. And there's not really a lot of cons. Maybe the only thing that I can think of, possibly, maybe the software. I just wish it was something like, Oxygen OS or something like what Pixels have. The software on this thing isn't really that great. I think it hurts it more than it helps it. So if you're somebody who wants longevity, custom ROM capability, all this stuff, you're not going to be getting it from a Galaxy S10e. You'll probably get it from like a OnePlus or a Pixel device, but you're definitely not going to get it from here. Is that a bad thing? Absolutely not. Some people may like One UI. I'm not really a fan of it. So that's one of my main complaints of this device. But even if the software was the worst, honestly, it's not the worst. But this phone is still a really, really good phone for sure. And what I'll tell you is at the end of the day, I would highly recommend the Samsung Galaxy S10e. Even still in 2021, it's a great phone and it's only getting better with the software. So that really pretty much covers it up. If you guys have any other questions or anything like that, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count. So it means so much if you guys can hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my other channels. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.